Coming to you live from Notre Dame's bell, where the hunchback swings around, because I had to think of a spot to come live from at the last second, and that was the first place to pop into my mind. This is the Disney Plus Weekly Review, brought to you by the Movie Change Up Podcast. As always, I am your host, Joe Fricke. I am joined by my best friend, Jar Jar Binks, or I guess Terrifying What If Tales, as you may know him as, or Tristan Mayer. But, yeah, we got a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about the What If Ultron Won episode of What If. We got Lego Star Wars Terrifying Tales that Tristan and I both watched today. We're going to talk about the latest episode of Doogie Kamealoha M.D. titled Lahela Stitch. We'll be talking about the Boba Fett poster and release date and some of the details that dropped from that. And we will be talking about what's coming up for the rest of this month on Disney Plus. Tristan, what are your thoughts on this whole thing? On
Me
Disney
so
Plus this
excited
week?
for this episode. I'm really
Uh,
looking forward to it, Joe. I had a good episode this week on Disney Plus. We had a really good outing from all three of the shows we're covering, I think, and a lot of interesting stuff coming up this month. So it's going to be a fun one to talk about. Unfortunately, I'm not on video right now, but you still get the Jar Jar Binks. I will limit the Jar Jar impressions to only a couple throughout the episode, but me so excited for this one, Joe.
all right, and you ready to get started? Talk about our first topic.
I'm ready.
All right, our first topic of the day today is the episode of What If? What If Ultron Won? Basically, the general plot of this episode is in Avengers: Age of Ultron. Ultron was beginning to build a synthetic human suit to take his next step in his advancement, and unfortunately for him, the Avengers got a hold of it and used it to create the hero known as Vision. However, in this version, that never happened, and Ultron was able to take the next step in his advancement, and basically ran through the Avengers like a hot knife through butter and completely wrecked and destroyed them. When he realized that the only way to achieve peace was to destroy all human lives, and when he pretty much accomplished that on Earth, he decided to accomplish that on other worlds, and it allowed him to. When he had the power of the Mind Stone, uh, what's his face? Thanos showed up, and again, Ultron basically made his way through him. And when Ultron gained the power of all of the Infinity Stones, realized there were more than just the worlds in his universe to conquer. There were other universes to conquer, and that's kind of the setup for this entire episode. Tristan, how did you feel about this episode? For me, this confirms everything I had about this show, that this show is not an anthology show, but all of these episodes are very much connected, and this may be my favorite episode. I love The Watcher. I really hope we get to see Jeffrey Wright play him in live action, and I will let you speak.
Yeah, that's we are questioning throughout this series. There's some fun here, fun there, ups and downs, but where is it kind of going to? And this is where it's going to. It feels like it's all coming together here, and I love the Watcher's growth throughout this series up to this point. We've seen him be a true Watcher, just an observer from the outside, and slowly but surely, we've seen his empathy grow when you've seen him get more and more involved, subconsciously sometimes, actively other times, and now this is him finally making the choice to become involved. But beyond that meta plot, I thought the actual episode itself was really exciting and fun to watch. Great action. I thought it was fun to see Black Widow and Hawkeye on a mission together. We never
Yeah.
really got to see that actually play out in the MCU. That was something they talked about a lot, like in the Avengers and some of the scenes together, but we never got, that Budapest movie we all wanted to see. So this was a good moment to get of those two characters together. Characters are probably never, there's no way we'd see them together in any form outside of some crazy multiverse, like we paid Scarlett Johansson a lot of money situation.
Yeah, I don't think she's coming back to Marvel anytime soon.
Something tells me that's not going to happen for a while.
Yeah, a little bit of bad blood there, but that's been fixed within the last few days, so who knows? Maybe they paid her off because they need to get her back for something, but I doubt she'd want to come back. What did you think about the fight in this movie between the Watcher and Ultron? I kind of like the idea. Basically, we've only seen the Watcher as kind of this, like, I want to say almost like peaceful guy and a guy that stays away. And the fact to see him throw down with a guy that basically Thanos was no more of a challenge to him than an ant would have been. So it's kind of cool to see how powerful the Watcher truly is.
Yeah, you mentioned that he like cut right through Thanos in that point. That was a really shocking death. I was like, oh look, Thanos is coming. That's going to be kind of like the third act of the episode. It's going to be Thanos versus Ultron, and then Thanos just instantly is killed. That was a pretty funny, dark moment, a good moment of dark humor in the MCU. But yeah, the action in the finale was great. I thought it really leaned into the concept of them fighting throughout the multiverse. You know, when every punch was so heavy, it was literally spiraling into different universes. You know, they would hit him and be in like a Wakanda universe. He'd hit him again, it'd be in like a medieval times universe. It was pretty cool to see that.
Yeah.
We've only
There's
seen the multiverse kind of from the outside looking in some ways, but now this is the first time we've really gotten to see like a journey through the multiverse in that way.
Speaking of the multiverse and them cutting through different universes, during that scene, there were a few universes that were shown that you didn't mention. Did you happen to see them?
Oh, I took down a couple of notes of some good ones, but I didn't take down them all, Joe. I'm sure that you went through and got a bunch. We got some
I've
president.
seen.
I know we got a President Steve Rogers universe. I'd
Yeah,
love to see
President
that
Steve
universe.
Rogers was great. That's one that would be amazing to see, maybe in like a what if season two kind of a deal, maybe. Because so far all of these have been like pretty negative endings, I would say, or not like endings that are bad, like endings that you would not want. It'd be cool if
Yeah,
like season like this one was a full like series, like this is telling a story. It'd be kind of cool if season two, what if, was maybe telling a different story overall, but they were all more positive, and I feel like a Steve Rogers presidency would be a more positive universe. Like it would be a more positive ending. Maybe it's different, but instead of like the happy life with Peggy, maybe he gets his happiness in a different way. Or maybe you still have the darker where it's like he wants to be on the front line saving, but he has to just kind of be behind a desk, and he realizes quickly it's a be careful what you wish for kind of a situation. But
yeah. Maybe he'd realize that having power behind the desk is less powerful than actually being out in the front lines and
yeah,
doing it when you don't have that red tape in the way. But
yeah,
we're theorizing about it totally could be episode. But yeah, I definitely think that's one they could go back to. I know the voice actor for Steve Rogers, who I can't remember the guy's name now, who replaced Chris Evans on the show, was tweeting a bit about the episode and really excited about that particular appearance and saying how much he wanted to do that again.
yeah.
So it'd be fun if they were gonna. They've already done season two, I would imagine, at this point in terms of writing it and actually starting the animation. So I
Yep.
bet that if they had plans for some of these, they've already gotten down the line of getting them started and into whatever season two episode they're going to be in.
Yep. There were two more universes I've noticed that I've
Give me
seen
some
people
good
talk
ones,
about.
Joe. I know we had a Scrolls universe. It was all Scrolls, it seemed like.
So there was a universe that took place that was a very quick shot. It was on Mustafar with Vader's castle in the background.
Oh wow, I missed that one. I watched the scene like three times and I still missed one. Like it seems.
And there was another one that people are kind of 50-50 on. That's what it was, but a lot of people believe one was the Fortress of Solitude from Superman.
Look, I mean, it's all connected now. The Disney shared universe is real. You know, it's like Space Jam: A New Legacy.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
And people are also, because in the shot of where Ultron, earlier in the episode where Ultron is going through and destroying all of these worlds, there's basically a moment that's a shot for shot remake of Krypton blowing up in Man of Steel.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's really cool. This reminds me of E.T. being in like Phantom Menace. Like that
Yeah.
doesn't actually matter to the plot. Like you're not gonna be like, oh well, now E.T.'s canon to Star Wars.
Yeah.
Just like no, it's just a cool background
Yeah.
shot. Like
Yeah.
don't. It's just something cool in the background. There's a bunch of cool background shots to Marvel, and
Yeah.
I love that though. I love that they're having fun with it. And yeah, like I mentioned, this is the first time we've really seen the multiverse
Yeah.
like fully kind of unleashed. We've seen
Yeah.
it talked about. We've seen like the concept explored a little bit, but we're really getting it full fledged right out of the gate here.
I would think a crossover kind of thing would be cool if they did it like in a thing we'll talk about in a few minutes here, but in like Lego form or something where you have Tony Stark and Han Solo, working together doing something, or you know, Captain Marvel and Ray and that kind of situation. I think it'd
Yeah,
be
we'll
fun
talk a
in
bit
like a
about
Lego form.
The Lego. We'll talk about the Lego thing in a minute, but I'll mention how like I enjoy the Lego things when I watch them because it does feel like you're just kind of like pouring out your toy box and playing
Yeah,
with whatever toys you
yeah,
had in your hands. You know, it doesn't have to make sense. The characters wouldn't in any feasible reality be talking to each other, but in your kid reality, it makes sense. They're here hanging out, fighting stormtroopers or whatever, and that would be the only way I could see this happening in that kind of
yeah,
reality. Like when I'm a kid and I power up my toys and Han Solo is out there hanging out with, Iron Man and they're all teaming up with Spider-Man. It doesn't even matter because they're all just my favorite characters. So I think maybe a Lego crossover could be an interesting one.
Yeah. All right, and one of the things that
Before
I just wanted to bring up one thing too about with we got an appearance from a character from a previous episode of the evil Doctor Strange who kind of ended his own universe. The Watcher basically went to him at the end of this episode and saying, "I need your help," and that was a big moment I liked. Where I'm like, okay, this is truly all connected, and I do think we are gonna go back to like T'Challa that became Star Lord. We'll probably get Party Thor. That never had
zombies,
Loki as a brother, and maybe that's how they defeat Ultron, as they unleash the zombies on Ultron.
I could see that. And it
Because
would all be
because
it'd be
with
all the
Vision,
zombies of Marvel characters.
he's half like he's part like he has flesh and stuff. I guess is what they're trying to say. So I do think that's how they will defeat Ultron: is unleash the zombies on Ultron.
I have a couple of cool things I want to mention before we move on. I thought there were a lot of good moments in the episode, but one thing that I thought stood out was Natasha using her pseudo father's shield, the Red Guardian shield, in her fighting.
Oh
It was
yeah, that
kind
was
of a
great.
cool nod to Black Widow and kind of brought everything together. And they never like made a point of it being his shield. She never said she never said anything directly about it, but it was obviously his shield. So that was kind of a cool nod, especially knowing that Black Widow and this were probably being made around the same time. So they had to plan that out a little bit.
Yeah,
I also loved Clint's line when he says, Nat, my will to live meter is flatlining.
yeah,
I was like, that's a really good way of putting that. I'm going to use that now.
yeah. That was there were some great lines in this episode and some great moments. One thing I want to ask is I brought it up before about wanting to see Jeffrey Wright as the Watcher in live action. What do you think the odds of that happening are?
I think they're pretty high. I was thinking it's a possibility in this episode for me. Like, the Watcher kind of looks like Jeffrey Wright in a way. Like, you could see how they could use makeup and effects to make it look like
Yeah,
him.
I think it would be
And,
like CGI, where you could look at it and be like, because I mean, just like the Watcher in the comics and stuff has always had like this massive head on like this little
mhm.
body, and so I think it would be like a visual effect type of thing, but where you could also clearly see that it's Jeffrey Wright.
Yeah, similar. Like, you can look at Thanos and tell that it's Josh Brolin, even though it's physically not actually Josh
Yeah,
Brolin. You know.
yeah, I feel like it'd be a similar type of thing.
I think we could. I think our best bet is to see him in Doctor Strange too. And that's probably like the only way I would see him coming in is there, or
Yeah,
like some future faraway Avengers movie, like whatever the next
yeah.
event is for the Avengers.
Maybe even something like the Eternals. I could see.
I could see that too. I can honestly see that being a post credit scene of Eternals.
Yeah,
Now that I'm thinking about it, I could see him showing up.
one of them reporting to the Watcher.
That could be a nice way to up the ante and be like, oh, look, we're really stepping forward into the multiverse.
Yeah.
One final thing I thought was cool was the Galactus reference. I don't want to have to be a Galactus reference in an episode we don't mention it. You know,
Oh
feel
yeah,
pretty
that's
cool to
what's
see
my mean.
Galactus.
We're like, I mean, wasn't that really Ultron though? It was just like visually, it looked like Galactus because he grew, like he was messing. He used the Reality Stone to like grow so much that he essentially turned into Galactus.
Yeah, it wasn't literally Galactus, but he was essentially like mimicking the look of Galactus, eating a whole galaxy the same
Yeah,
way Galactus does.
yeah,
So I thought they were definitely directly referencing Galactus while
yeah,
not actually using him as a character.
yeah, yeah. That's basically where I was too.
That was definitely cool. We're slowly seeing the worlds collide, Joe. We're seeing the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, the Cosmic, and all kind of coming into the Marvel universe.
Yeah. And this kind of all goes into my theory with this kind of thing of like I think the Fantastic Four, well, especially the X Men, but potentially the Fantastic Four, have existed and maybe existed together, but they were in another universe. And I think that's the best way to do the X Men. If the X Men have existed forever, but in their own universe, and try instead of trying to say like the Snap created the X-Men or all of that, I feel like it's just too confusing because it's like, how do you have characters like Wolverine and Professor X who are supposed to be these lifelong mutants when the mutant gene was only like unleashed like 2 years ago, you know?
Yeah, I
I
would
feel
bet
like
that's
that's
the
truly
direction they're
not
gonna
the
go.
X-Men anymore. Like if the X-Men and all of these people all got their powers 2 years ago, I feel like that's truly not the X-Men, and you can't really fully explore what the X-Men are at that point.
I have no spoilers for Venom here, but I saw it today, and they do a couple times throughout say the word mutation and mutant,
Yeah.
referring to certain characters in the movie. It's not like an X-Men character or something, but they use the words mutant.
Okay.
So I think it's interesting. The first time we've heard that used in like a Marvel adjacent movie. So I wonder if they're hinting at the fact that things are connected in that way. I don't want to spoil the movie, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this all kind of comes together as uh, what if escalates and everything kind of is. We're starting to get a better picture, I think, of where the show ties into things and how all of this is going to kind of tie together.
All right. You ready to move on to our next topic?
I'm ready.
All right. The next is the topic of Lego Star Wars Terrifying Tales, which is kind of a 45-minute short film, I guess. I don't know. It's not really a full-on movie, but to me a short film's more like 20, 30 minutes. But either way, it's 45 minutes long. And this episode is in Lego form. Poe Dameron's kind of the main character, and the plot is a few years after the Rise of Skywalker. He crash lands on Mustafar, where he finds out that a Hutt by the name of Graballa the Hutt, who also appeared in the Freemaker Adventures, which was a Lego Star Wars show on Disney XD, is turning Vader's castle into basically like a casino hotel type situation. And he also meets this young character named Dean, who reminded me a lot of Anakin in the Phantom Menace. I feel like that was somewhat on purpose. The character's name was Dean, working for Graballa the Hutt, and he kind of wants this better life. And they also run into the character of Vinay, who was in Rogue One as kind of Vader's right hand man. He was in
Voiced
the
by Tony Hale in
yeah,
this.
yep. He was basically he was in the trailer for Rogue One, and a lot of people were speculating because we see him kneel down in front of a Bacta tank, and we are like, wait, is that Vader kneeling in front of Palpatine? Is that Palpatine kneeling in front of Vader? What's going on? Nope. Just turns out it's this new character, Vinay, and they run into him while they were touring Vader's castle, and he tells them 3 stories throughout the tour. One about Kylo Ren, one about Darth Maul, and then one about Luke Skywalker. And they're all basically, essentially, what-if stories, where they're definitely not canon. They basically all contradict canon, but they're all these kind of fun stories, similar to like the old movie series or television series, Terrifying Tales, where they got the name, or like a Creep Show, where all of these stories are like an anthology story, but it kind of relates to the general narrative of the outside world of Poe Dameron and Vinay and this kid Dean and all that, and it all comes together. And we find out that Vinay obviously had some nefarious purposes in telling them these stories. And it was pretty solid. It wasn't anything I'll probably go back to and watch again. But if you have a young kid Star Wars fan, like, 8-ish, 9, 10 years old, I definitely think you should show it to them. They'll probably think, it's if you're a parent, it's something you can watch and not want to pull your eyes out with a spoon. But and they'll definitely enjoy it. So I think, yeah, if that's your situation, I definitely think give it a watch. If you're like a hardcore Star Wars fan that wants to consume anything Star Wars, I definitely say to check it out as well. But it's far from a must-watch, I would say. What are your thoughts, Tristan?
I had a good time with it overall. Not definitely not a must watch, but I think if you want to get in the Halloween spirit, you want to kind of just have a good time. I think it's worth the watch. I think I feel a bit more positive on it than you do. You're talking about you're not going to scrape your eyes out with a spoon. I
Oh,
agree with you on that, but I do think I liked it. Honestly, I had a good time with each of these 3 stories. The plot tying it together was whatever. It was cool to see
yeah,
Poe
that's kind
Dameron
of what I
again.
was. The stories within it, I really liked. The plot tying it together was whatever.
That's how I feel about most anthologies. I was like the plot tying it together is not necessarily what you're watching it for as much as the individual
Yeah,
stories.
yeah,
And I thought it was fun to see these what if. You mentioned it's sort of like Star Wars what if, and that's how I felt. You get the what if of Kylo Ren. I like the Kylo Ren one probably the most, where you're getting like the Knights of Ren is like this biker gang who roll up on uh, Luke's little school like Lost Boy style and like tempt Kylo Ren to the dark side, and it had very much like a Lost Boys Joel Schumacher feel to that
yep,
first short, and Christian Slater gives like a really fun performance as the main villain. He
with a
has like
mullet. That
Kiefer
was great.
Sutherland vibes.
Yeah,
Yep.
he was the original Ren that the Knights of Ren are like formed around and based on, and that's in the comics too. So that, like, that's the thing. A lot of this Lego stuff is like tangentially, that's a word, canon, where you can kind of get a little bit of maybe where they're headed with certain things and like kind of see things that are canon, but like the stories themselves are not exactly canon, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you get an idea of what they're focusing on and what kind of characters they want you to pay attention to, and I think the fact that Poe Dameron is essentially our vessel into this is interesting because I think that Poe Dameron could be the character they use to kind of like revitalize the sequel era a bit,
Yeah.
and he could be the one character who doesn't have any real baggage on him that could be they could bring back into in some kind of way.
Yeah, everyone loves Oscar Isaac too, so drop back a Brinks truck up to his house and be like, "Hey, we want you as a side character in Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron."
Yeah, and he's already working with Disney for Moon Knight, so he's in the
Yeah.
circle. You know, he's in the gang there.
Yep.
I thought it was fun too to see Luke become part of the Imperial Navy essentially and become like a bad guy.
Yeah,
And
that was cool. That was my favorite of the three stories. Even though I'm a hardcore Darth Maul guy, as evidenced by my Darth Maul Funko Pop back there, um, hardcore Darth the Luke Skywalker joining the Imperial Academy, and you know, working for Vader and all of that was my favorite story because that was the most what if of the three.
yeah, because you definitely got that element of this is what could have actually happened to Luke, and if you squint and look at it the right way, kind of way, like
Yeah.
if Luke went this direction and turned to the dark side, and it also has that what if angle of like these everything can change, but you still have these like staple events of them taking out the Death Star. Like you have these staple events of something's always going to happen, even if they happen in different ways. And I like that about this episode too. Is yeah, Kylo Ren still turns against Luke's temple, even though it happens in a different way, and the Death Star still blows up, even if it happens in a different way. And Maul still comes back to life and turns against Palpatine and becomes like his own dark side fighter, even if it happens in a different way than it does here. These kind of feel just like even as if presented in the episode, they do feel like these legends you tell among the Star Wars galaxy, like a story you tell like Luke by the Tatooine fire at night.
Yeah, I will say because we haven't really touched on the Darth Maul story much. My favorite aspect of that was definitely seeing Maul versus Grievous, even if it was in Lego form. Because one of the things I'll never understand is how is a Force user fighter versus a non-Force user fighter close at all ever in any way. When Darth Maul just lifts Grievous up, uses Grievous' own lightsabers to cut his limbs off, and drops him to the ground. I'm like, yeah, that's how every fight between a Force user and non-Force user should go.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about it that way, but you make a good point, Joe. Yeah, the Force and one's a robot guy.
Yeah, yeah, like basically like as much as people like the fight, the Jango Fett Obi-Wan fight and Attack of the Clones, I'm like they should not even be close. Obi-Wan could just hold him up in the air and just slowly remove his armor and just drop him on the ground with zero weapons, zero anything, and be like, I mean, we can keep doing this fight, or you can, and I can kill you, or you can surrender now. Like, what are we doing here?
The Force works in mysterious ways, Joe.
Yeah. Like, I understand there's the story and they have to fight because reasons, but also just logically, I always look at Force user versus non-Force user fights, and I'm like, what's going on? What are we doing?
I thought it was funny in the Luke episode, the Luke story, whenever he'd make a wish on the Wookiee's paw, instantaneously, like it would come true in the most cheesy way possible.
Oh
And be
yeah,
like, I
that
wish
was
I can
fun.
get as far away from this planet as possible. And
And the guy would
immediately,
just
an
roll
Imperial
up.
pilot walks over and says, "Son, do you want to get away from this planet as soon as possible?"
Yeah. I like that Luke definitely killed, like, Big Starklighter.
Yeah, Luke definitely killed like a whole bunch of people.
Oh, and what was great too when they were going to defend when he was going to defend Vader when he was in the Tie Fighter, when Leia and Kenobi was still alive, and because he's like, oh man, like I had a feeling I was gonna die on that Death Star. That was a pretty good moment.
Yeah, and it was fun that he was still alive and that him and Leia were not in the background talking over speakers. They were actually the ones leading the fight, because they didn't
Yeah.
have Luke to lead the fight.
Yep. Yeah, I thought that was great. I wish there would have cut to like Han, like just a random scene of like Jabba like killing Han Solo or something.
Han just like flying around in the Millennium Falcon,
Bored.
doing nothing.
Yeah,
Yep.
that would have been fun. Anything else you got to say about this episode?
No, I was a little bit surprised how much I liked it. I would not a must watch, but surprisingly entertaining start to the Halloween season. It dropped October 1st, so I think it's a good way to jump in. I know throughout the month we're going to be talking about a few different like Halloween themed episodes of Disney shows, a couple of the Halloween themed Disney movies. So this was a good way to kind of kick it off with a Halloween themed Star Wars special.
Yep. Yeah, it was fun. 45 minutes or so, perfect length. Wouldn't have wanted much longer, and I felt any shorter, it would have felt a little rushed. Like I said, you're a hardcore Star Wars fan, a completionist, or maybe an older Star Wars fan with a young kid in your life. I would say check it out. But if you're like 35 and you're like meh on Star Wars, I'm gonna say you probably don't need to check it out. It's not gonna this ain't this if you're not a Star Wars fan, this isn't gonna turn you into one.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if people were like, "Oh, I hated Star Wars," and then I watched Terrifying Tales, and I was like, "You know what? I get it now."
Yeah, everything about Star Wars makes sense to me. All right, and you ready to move on to our next topic?
I'm ready to move on, Joe. We got a good one.
All right, we have Doogie Kamealoha M.D. episode 4, Lahela and Stitch. In this one, we start off great because she's looking at a picture of our boy Walter.
He's like the first thing they talk about.
The After last episode with no Walter, I was getting a little nervous that maybe the whole Walter storyline got dropped. But when this episode opens on her looking at a picture of Walter, our boy, I'm like, hell yeah. The only 16-year-old in the universe with the name Walter. But he's fun. I like the character, and I hope he's in every episode moving forward.
We got a lot of Walter this week, though. It was a
Yeah.
Walter-centric episode.
Yeah, Walter needs his own show. Um, but basically, the plot of this episode is Lahela isn't exactly sure how things are going with her and Walter because they've been a little awkward and there's been some confusion between them, and they go on a double date with Lahela's brother and Lahela's best friend. And they go mini golfing, and during mini golfing, and as someone who has had appendicitis, I could see this coming a mile away when he was like, my stomach hurts, and immediately I was like, oh, he's gonna have appendicitis. And then he was like, it started in my stomach, and then it kind of shifted to my side. I'm like, this is definitely where it's going. Long story short, all of the doctors at the hospital are busy, and Lahela, who's a kid doctor, obviously it's a Doogie Howser reboot. This is the first episode of Disney Plus review that you've watched, probably should have given a little explanation of the show. Doogie Kamealoha is a reboot of Doogie Howser about a 16-year-old doctor. And she's the one that has to do the appendectomy on Walter. And after that, things get a little weird. If they weren't nervous, if they weren't awkward between them already, it's certainly awkward now. And Doogie fully believes that Walter is basically scared of how smart Lahela is and is like thinks that she's almost maybe too smart, and so Lahela thinks she has to dumb herself down. Tristan, what did you think about this episode?
It was a fun one. I like this. I like the energy of like them going out on the first date and stuff. I think is a really interesting character. I like her a lot. She's the fun best friend in the show, and I like that she kind of feels like she's becoming a bit of a third wheel at this point, and I think it's interesting that it's not a show where all the relationships are perfect, and that I think that they're leading towards the fact that like Kame Aloha has her whole life that she's very busy, and sometimes she doesn't think about other people as much as she should, and I think that she's gonna have an arc of her own through that and the growth of that. So I like that a lot, and I also liked we had speaking of the MCU, we had our own little multiverse crossover here because we got an appearance from Randall Park showing up for the episode here. He plays kind of this arrogant doctor that comes in, and he's supposed to give this presentation, but he shows up late, and he's coming in like name dropping celebrity patients, and I thought that was a really fun performance from him, and you can see how much of an instantaneous personality foil he is to Kame's mom, because she's absolutely not that personality. She's like the very by the book, very professional kind of person, and he comes in and he's not that at all. So that clash was a lot of fun. I like that the show doesn't just give Kame the plots and actually allows the side characters to have fun parts, and it brings in big name guest stars and uses them for the B plot rather than for Kame's like main plot.
Yeah.
So it was interesting that they were able to once again balance the parent characters with the kid characters.
Yeah, and the celebrity guest that Tristan is talking about is Irvin Magic Johnson, former LA Laker and alumnus of Michigan State University, which is why I decided to wear my Michigan State shirt today. And that was kind of fun. He was definitely on. He didn't actually like fully appear in the episode. He was on basically a Skype call, which makes me question if he even knew what the hell show he was on. Because when he was like name dropping him, I had like no like thought that he was actually going to be in the episode, and then when he was, I'm like, I wonder if he even knows what show he's on, or if he's
Yeah, he
just
was
like
definitely
friends with a
like
producer and he's like, say these lines into a camera.
yeah, it was the middle of the shutdown. He was like stuck in his house for months, and they were like, "Oh, we'll pay you a couple $1,000 if you
Yeah,
say these lines on FaceTime real quick."
yeah,
And he was
yeah,
like, "I got you."
exactly. And the B plot with the mom was kind of cool because what gave me it was basically she felt like she was neglecting her family, but she also wanted to be chief of staff, and so she decided, you know what, I can't fix this hospital. I'm just gonna go back to being part time and spend more time with my family. And the family was like, get the fuck out of the house. We can't stand you being around all the time. One of the great moments was she was trying to like play video games with her youngest son, and she was like, "Oh, how do you win? Like, what do you do?" And he was like, I'm probably just gonna walk around the village and make a pot of stew." And that's like the most that perfectly encapsulates like modern gaming. When the mom was just like, "And that's supposed to be fun," and he's like, "It was." But like if it's the right game and the right story and all that, like with the Minecraft type situation, the game wasn't Minecraft. I don't know if the game he was playing is an actual game or if it's just like some video game looking footage they had made for the show. But yeah, like that's kind of seems to be what modern gaming is anymore.
Yeah, I played plenty of those games where I'll sit there for hours and I'm like, okay, I cut down some trees, I cooked some
Yeah,
food, we walked around,
yeah,
real productive time.
yeah. But do we want to give spoilers on? Oh, and Lahela and Stitch. It was. I mean, I guess because she's a doctor and she like stitched the guy up. But there was she goes to like comfort Walter and she gives him a Stitch balloon at the hospital. And I'm like, oh, that's why this episode I guess was called Lahela and Stitch. But I don't know. That's my
Yeah,
only
I was
gripe with
hoping
the
for some.
episode is the title didn't fully make sense. But I think you and I are both still on board of this show is way better than we ever expected it would have been. I thought we were going to cover episode 1 trash on it, and here we are on episode 4 being like, yeah, this show's good. Can't wait for next week.
Yeah, it's honestly getting. I mean, it's getting just as good as it's been. I feel like it's even improving a bit as the actors seem to like find the characters a bit
Mm,
more. They all seem a bit more comfortable together. Yeah, I'm liking the show. I'm really surprised by it. Yeah, I wish the titles are more on the nose though. Give me something like Turner and Hooch, where they had the Die Hard episode and it was like all Die Hard references. I
yeah.
want something. You got a Lilo and Stitch title. You got to give me some
Yeah, there's got
aliens.
to.
You got to give me some cool stuff.
Yeah. Even if there wasn't aliens, but like she was given like a dog to watch, and the dog's name was Stitch. Come on.
Oh yeah, not, give me some cameos, not actual cameos, but some lines, some connective tissue, if you will,
Yeah.
deliver.
The only thing I will say about this show is I hope after this episode, because we've now had 2 episodes of it, of Lahela thinking that Walter doesn't like her because she's so smart, and then her at the end realizing, oh, that's not what their problem was. I kind of hope we're done with that storyline and we can just move on to other things.
Yes, I hope there's more than just the same problem for the relationships. I hope this show's going to get stale pretty quick if these characters keep running into the same problems every week, and I like the characters a lot, so I wanted to see them do interesting things together and go on new stories and face new problems. I don't want it to just be the same, like, oh, does
Yeah.
he really like me? Does he not? Problem every episode.
Yeah. Yeah. He likes you. He has no problem with your smarts. He actually likes that you're smart. Move it along. All right. I think that's all we have to say about Doogie, right? Anything
Yeah, I
else you
can't
want
wait
to?
for the next episode. I can't believe it, but I'm looking forward to every episode of the show.
Oh, and I forgot I was going to add one thing. I think I want to know, are the writers on this show dialed in with youth culture, or do they have like kids consult on the show to a certain degree, like how when the guy that made 8th grade,
Bo
uh,
Burnham.
Bill Burnham, Bo Burnham, was writing 8th grade, and he had them like communicating on Facebook Messenger, and like the kids on in the movie were like, no one our age uses Facebook Messenger. We use Snapchat or whatever. Like the whole thing about like just like the lingo that they use, like, oh, like I'm not on his main, just referring to Instagram. I'm like, yeah, that's how like late teenagers, early 20-year-olds talk. So I'm curious if they have young writers on the show, if they consulted the actors on the show maybe, or if they're just like that tuned into youth culture.
Yeah, I think it's really impressive that they're able to make it seem so natural when these kids talk to each other.
Yeah.
So a lot of times on Disney shows, when
Yeah.
kids this age talk to each other, they feel so squeaky clean that it's like bizarre. They don't feel like human beings. And I think these characters, they still talk like Disney TV characters, but they feel like real people and they say
Yeah.
natural things like that. And I do wonder if you can, I'm sure he probably got that from the actress or any of the people involved. I would think would
Yeah.
be like, oh, we wouldn't say that. We'd say it like this or something like that. And that helps the show too. I know there's a few parts I googled the mini golf that they mentioned. I said, "Oh, they said this by name, so it's got to be like something that's real." And it was not. I guess they couldn't get the copyright to name drop an actual mini golf place in Hawaii, but they have throughout the show been like trying to keep the details of uh, Hawaiian places and different. They've name dropped places that are real, people that are real, things that people actually do in the area. So yeah, that along with the social media stuff, I like this just the attention to detail in the writing here. It
Yep.
really elevates the show.
All right. You ready to move on to our next thing?
Let's go.
All right. Our next thing, we got a Book of Boba Fett poster and a release date along with the poster. If you saw the post-credit scene from Mandalorian season 2, it's essentially the same thing. Boba Fett chilling on a chair, chilling on his throne. Essentially, we got the title artwork, which we've seen already, the Book of Boba Fett, and we have a release date. They told us Christmas 2021, and it looks like we're getting it December 29th. We also got a little bit of announcement. This is from StarWars.com, so you're not going to get any more reliable than this. And it says, The Book of Boba Fett, a thrilling Star Wars adventure, finds legendary bounty hunter Boba Fett and mercenary Fennec Shan navigating the galaxy's underworld when they return to the sands of Tatooine to take their claim on the territory once ruled by Jabba the Hutt and his crime syndicate. The Book of Boba Fett stars Tamora Morrison and Ming-Na Wen. Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, Robert Rodriguez, Kathleen Kennedy, and Colin Wilson are the executive producers, and then it just lists more producers and stuff beyond that. But that little description didn't really tell us anything we didn't already know. Based on the post-credit scene alone, I could have written that little blurb. But any thoughts on this? Any speculation? Any theories? Any ideas on what we may see in the Book of Boba Fett?
Yeah, it's curious. It seems like it's going to be sort of their journey of how they actually take over the underworld. Like, of course, we saw them take the throne, but there's more than just taking the throne. It's going to seem like they kind of rise to power. So that'll be interesting to watch. Of course, Boba Fett is an interesting character that is so unexplored, despite being so popular. Like, he's
Yeah.
such a huge, huge character, and for such a popular character to be so unexplored is kind of rare for Star Wars. They've kind of explored every inch of the galaxy, it seems, with a lot of the known characters. But yeah, the release date, I like it. It's a perfect Christmas gift. You finish up the holidays, you come back home a couple of days later, and it's just in time for Star Wars to be back. It's end of Christmas for me, beginning of New Year time. So it'll be a great way to end the year with the Star Wars show.
All right, and a little bit of things. So this episode or this day, December 29th, is also going to be the last day of Hawkeye. Some people are speculating final episode of Hawkeye may get an early release, and that final episode may drop on Christmas Day itself. Number one, to separate it out, but also two, to maybe like get trending and stuff on Twitter and Instagram and all that of like, oh, surprise early release Hawkeye. But if they
Merry
both release
Christmas.
December 29th, which one would you watch first? The premiere of Book of Boba Fett or the finale of Hawkeye?
It's hard to say because if I'm at that point in Hawkeye and I'm really, really, really into it, I'm going to be watching Hawkeye for sure. If I'm loving the Hawkeye show, but if I'm sitting here right now and they're telling me, okay, you can watch Book of Boba Fett episode 1 or you can watch the finale of Hawkeye, I'm watching Book of Boba Fett because I'm really curious what they'll do with the character, where they'll take him, how been a while since we've been in the Star Wars universe. How much is this going to look like Mandalorian? How much is this going to look new? What are, how quickly do we get to the fact to them taking over Tatooine like that? Is that like was that post credit scene like the first scene of the show essentially, or is that going to be like what we get to as we go along the show? I'm really interested to see how it all figures out, and I feel like Hawkeye. By the time I get to the finale, I'm gonna have a good idea of what it is and where we're going. So I won't be too desperate and hungry for where it ends up, unless, like I said, I'm super in love with the show and I'm like craving to get that last hour in.
I will say this: I think if Jabba the Hutt had lived, right, like didn't die in Return of the Jedi for whatever reason, or maybe wasn't even in Return of the Jedi, which I guess wouldn't have made sense. But if like Leia just injured him and they were able to get away, um, and then the post-credit scene of Mandalorian season 2 is him killing Jabba and taking the throne, I would say that could potentially be like a finale moment, and that the whole series is building to that moment. But when it's him killing Bib Fortuna, who is always seen as like this lackey kind of character, I don't really see an entire series building up of him killing this lackey character. So I think it's gonna open, or like it's gonna like I could easily see the episode starting with Boba Fett already sitting on the throne, having killed Bib Fortuna. But there was a theory someone posted. Oh, and it was announced too that Ludwig Göransson is doing the score for Book of Boba Fett. Or it's basically heavily rumored, basically almost confirmed that Ludwig Göransson is doing the score for Book of Boba Fett. But one theory I want to poise to you, uh, in the Star Wars speculation subreddit, Reddit user Alcibiad, Alcibiad, has a theory that the Book of Boba Fett is going to be young Ben Solo has been kidnapped, and Han and Leia have to go to Han's old rival, Boba Fett, to find a young Ben Solo. It's 5 years out. Ben would be 5 years old. Uh, at this point, he'd be like 6 or 7 years old. But they go on further that basically Ochi, who is the character that killed Rey's parents, kidnapped Ben for Palpatine essentially, and Boba's the one that has to go rescue him. And there's some like other reasons, and they explain it further. But how would you feel about that as a plot line?
Look, I mean, I love Ben Solo. I love to see more of him. I'd love to see more of that time of his life as well, like when he was still that young kid, that punk kind of conflicted kid who was going down this dark path but not quite there yet. I think that's an interesting time to explore for the character. But I don't need Book of Boba Fett to connect to everything. Like we already have enough connective characters in Mandalorian, and we're gonna have one or two, I'm sure, in Boba Fett. So as much as I would love to see some way to bring the sequel trilogy into this again and revive it again. I don't need to see Han Solo in the show. I don't need to see Princess Leia in the show. I don't need all of those characters showing up. I feel like the potential of Book of Boba Fett is that you're getting beyond that and seeing. Sure, you have Boba Fett and you have some of the underworld characters, but you're seeing parts of the world you haven't seen before. And if we're just going back to the literal same trio of the original trilogy again, that's going to feel like a bit of a letdown for something that should feel like a separate spin-off removed thing.
Yeah.
But I would love to see the story itself sounds good, but not this. I don't want it to be like what we get out of this one-off Boba Fett story.
Yeah, the one thing then you probably won't like my next discussion topic is for a lot of these shows they've released like a large bit of the cast, like Obi-Wan or Kenobi, which we are not sure when it's coming out, has released a large portion of its cast, and/or has released a large portion of its cast for Book of Boba Fett. We got two cast member announcements. We have Tamura Morrison and Ming-Na Wen, and we know no other cast members beyond that. And part of me thinks we don't know the cast members because the cast members would essentially be spoilers. If they're like, yeah, we have the voice actor for Cad Bane, we have the voice actor for Hondo. You know, we have this actor. You know, we brought in Alden Ehrenreich. We've brought in, you know, all these characters that have played, or all these actors that have played characters within Star Wars are going to be in Book of Boba Fett. People basically know all of the characters in Book of Boba Fett. So that's my thought. Do you think there's maybe another reason that we really don't know the cast of Book of Boba Fett, even though it's the next show, when we know a lot of the cast of other shows that are further down the road?
I think it. I see it on both sides. I do see your argument that when you don't have the cast on there, it does lean to the idea that they're probably. I mean, I guarantee we probably have a Cad Bane, we probably have Hondo, we probably have a handful of those characters
I
that do show up, and they're probably not listed on the cast for a reason.
I would say my.
But
All right, go ahead, and I'll
you
say what
know,
I was gonna say.
I was gonna say, but I also think the opposite is true. They released the Obi-Wan cast super early because they knew it was going to be connected characters. They knew it would get out, so they had to say, okay, we got to announce that Hayden's in the show. We got to announce that Taron Egerton is in the show because that's going to get out. Because
Joel.
these are shared characters. It's too big of it. Not Taron
Yeah,
Egerton, Joel Egerton.
Yeah, Taron Egerton's the. If Taron, I'd be down for Taron Egerton in Star Wars. He was on the short list for to play Han Solo in Solo.
Yeah, he would have been a cool Han Solo. But yeah, I think the reason I see both arguments. I think there's an argument for they're not releasing the cast because there's big names on it. But I do think if there are big names on it, they're a bit more inclined to release the cast in certain situations because then you guarantee it doesn't get leaked and you keep your eyes off of the important thing. You know, you release the cast of Obi-Wan, you release the cast of Mandalorian so that people aren't looking at Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, I fully believe they intentionally leaked the Ahsoka being in Mandalorian season 2 to keep people's eyes off Luke Skywalker. However, if we were to do a draft of characters we think are going to be in Book of Boba Fett, my number one pick would obviously not be Luke Skywalker. It would not be Cad Bane or Hondo. My number one draft pick would be Emilia Clarke as Kira. I think with
Your number one pick.
I think with War of the Bounty Hunters coming out, and she's been talking about Star Wars more and more lately, I think Emilia Clarke as Kira is the most likely character to return. Especially if we're going to focus on the underworld and a character taking over the underworld, it would make sense for her to appear.
Yeah, I could see her being a way to kind of link us into the underworld and be a recurring villain in the background in some kind of way. I don't mind them connecting these kind of like B and C supporting characters to each other. You know, like bringing in Cad Bane, bringing in Hondo, even bringing in Kira. I think that's kind of a cool thing to do.
Yeah, I think if you're focusing on the underworld, especially when I mean, Hondo not as much, but like Cad Bane was Boba Fett's rival as a youth, so like they're connected. It makes sense. Like if you're gonna do, like if they were saying, hey, we're doing an animated show on, basically Ben and Luke's adventures while Luke was creating the Jedi Academy. Like, I don't think bringing Han and Leia is exactly like, oh, they're bringing in all these old characters. We're the new characters. It's like, well, it makes sense that Han and Leia would show up. The show focuses on their son and brother/brother-in-law, so why wouldn't they be there? But yeah, I do think though, if I'm watching Book of Boba Fett and I'm seeing like characters not connected to Boba Fett at all start appearing, I'm gonna be like, what the hell? But even like Kira is not a direct connection, but she's still an underworld connection. She was essentially at one point the head of the underworld. So
yeah, there's plenty of characters you can bring in that make sense and don't feel like you're just throwing characters at the wall to fit. You know, I think it'll be fascinating to see the show because, like you said, it's the next one up, and we don't know anything really about it.
Yeah, and
of course we have a few months to go between then and now, but not that long.
Yeah, we have about 6 weeks, a little under 6 weeks until we get the trailer for Book of Boba Fett, 'cause I'm sure it's dropping on Disney Plus Day, November 12th. That makes the most sense.
That's what I'm guessing too. It'll be exciting to see it though. We're any day now. I'll be ramping up for that promotion for that show.
All right, and you ready to talk about the rest of October?
Yeah, speaking up, we got a lot of stuff coming up, so I'm excited. We're going to go through what we got for you guys coming up on Disney Plus in October. We're probably not going to cover all of this stuff, but if there's any of this stuff you guys want us to cover, definitely let us know, because I'd be down to watch any of it if you want us to.
All right, yeah, I'll just start through each day of the drops and kind of list big drops. It seems that it's more front-loaded than back-loaded. So October 1st, obviously we have Lego Star Wars Terrifying Tales. We've talked about that. The first two Alvin and the Chipmunks movies are now on Disney Plus. So
oh joy! If you really want to torture yourself,
if you want to fucking shoot your fucking face off repeatedly, watch those movies. For younger kids, we have the scariest story ever, the Mickey Mouse Halloween Spooktacular, which is kind of in that new 2D Disney animation style, which I am massively not a fan of. It makes Mickey Mouse look like some reject garbage character. It's not his iconic look that you and I and pretty much everyone else grew up with. It's just not an animation style I enjoy, so I'm definitely not going to watch that. But and then also today, Maleficent dropped. So, any thoughts on October 1st?
Yeah, we had. I think Lego Star Wars is the best thing on there. Maleficent is a solid movie. I think it's a good time for it to drop too. October is a good fit for it. Nice chilly kind of Halloween vibe kind of movie. I'd recommend Maleficent if you haven't seen it. I think it's worth the watch certainly.
Yep. All right, and for October 6th, Black Widow is dropping on Disney Plus for free. So if you haven't checked that out yet, it's going to be free. We have Among the Stars, which is a six-part NASA docu-series essentially about an astronaut going back into space and about various other astronauts in NASA, like on that same mission and kind of what it means to them and like their goal and them working together and all that. We have the Turner and Hooch finale, which I need to get caught up on that. We also have the Marvel's What If finale, which we will definitely be covering. And then we have Impact with Gal Gadot, which is a docu-series it's going to follow six women from, I think, poor countries and their struggles and what they've overcome to get where they are. So any thoughts on the October 6th drop?
Yeah, I didn't know there was going to be a Gal Gadot or Gal Gadot series on Disney Plus. It'll be interesting to see, crossing the streams there between Warner Brothers
Mm,
and Disney. And yeah, if you haven't seen Black Widow, I think of course it's worth watching for free on Disney Plus. I imagine if you're in any way invested in Marvel, you've probably seen it, but I'll definitely be giving that one a rewatch at some point this month.
all right.
Oh, and I'm also looking forward to the NASA documentary as well. I think that'll be interesting. I like space science and that kind of thing. I think it's a really unexplored area of science that deserves a lot more attention, a lot more funding than it gets. So I think documentaries like this are the potential to get people, especially young kids who are Disney fans, and this one will watch this with the parents
Yep.
into space and wanting to explore that science. So I think it's a good thing to drop stuff like this on Disney Plus.
Yep. And then on October 8th, we have Muppet Haunted Mansion, which we covered the trailer last week. So if you're curious about that, you can go back and watch our discussion about that. And then there's also a remake of Under Wraps, which is known as the first ever DCOM, which is a Disney Channel original movie. I saw the description, which seems like the plot description from the original movie, and a promotional picture, and it looked terrible. It looked like an image you would find at a Spirit Halloween, and
Oh no.
I kind of want to drunk watch that. I want to kind of do it. I don't even know if it's worthy of a drunk watch along. Maybe it's gonna be so short, and I know the original Under Wraps has to be like an hour 20. Maybe we go crazy and do a Under Wraps double feature where we watch the original and immediately go into watching the remake.
Look, I'm down for that. I think that's a perfect way to look. Only an hour and a half. You just gotta drink heavily.
Yeah,
Like two drinks for every rule. You just gotta really get it quick.
yeah. And the original Under Wraps stars the voice of Patrick Starr as the Mummy, so that's always fun.
I don't think I've seen the original Under Wraps, so if we did that
Ooh,
double feature, it'd be a
that
first
would
time watch for me.
that would be good. Yeah, we should definitely watch it. October 13th, we have something I'm intrigued by. We have Just Beyond, which is going to be an anthology show based on the works of R.L. Stein.
We got a lot of R.L. Stein going on in pop culture now. We have the Fear Street trilogy on Netflix. I've heard somewhere talking about a Goosebumps potential revival going on somewhere, and now we got this. I'm in for the '90s nostalgia revival
Yeah,
going on.
yeah. I was always a Michigan Chillers kid, but R.L. Stein, he did work.
Yeah, I always remember those book covers out on the Scholastic Book Fair coming to my school. You go in there,
Yeah,
you see all the Stephen King or covers, all the R.L. Stein covers. Ooh, those are scary ones. I
yeah,
got to be careful looking at those.
yeah. And then October 20th, we have a documentary about the making of Black Widow. So for hardcore Marvel fans, that should be a fun watch. Just kind of learn the more PR friendly puff piece about how this movie got came out.
And those are usually pretty interesting. They are PR puff pieces, but I think what's more interesting about them is the technology
Yeah.
aspect, when they go into how they did some of the effects and some of the action scenes. In particular, the Mandalorian ones are really fascinating to watch. I thought the WandaVision one was really interesting. Black Widow had some really rough effects and action scenes that weren't as impressive as some other stuff. So it'll be interesting to see if this kind of like recontextualizes the action a bit and makes me like it a bit more than I did when I watched it the first time.
Yeah, definitely. On October 22nd, we have 2 drops. We have Rookie of the Year, pops up on Disney Plus, and then we also have Thumbelina. So nothing new, but just if you're a fan of those 2 movies, get excited because October 22nd, you're going to be able to watch them for free on Disney Plus.
Go Cubs.
Yeah, exactly. And then October 27th, we have the making of What If. So there's going to be a little bit of a gap between the What If finale and the making of What If, 3 weeks, which is weird because normally those come out the next week. So I'm curious if there's any kind of reason that there's that big of a delay. Maybe they just knew they needed something later in the month. And then October 29th, the Kevin Costner classic, McFarland USA, drops.
Somehow I knew you'd like that one.
Drops on Disney. I've never seen it. I don't care. It's a movie about track. Woohoo. But if you like track, if you were a nerd that couldn't play a real sport in high school,
Ouch.
watch McFarland USA. I did
It's a good
track
dad
freshman
movie.
year, I'll be honest, but it was dumb.
I did track freshman year, and I was like, that is not for me. I'm not a fan of running, you know?
No. Hey, you know the part that's like the shitty part of most sports? Yeah, we're just going to make that sport itself. Running. Fucking dumb. Usain Bolt's not an athlete. Oh, he's fast. Do something else. Catch a ball.
All right. I love to see Joe outrace Usain Bolt.
I didn't say I'm faster than him. I'm just saying who cares about running?
All right.
I know.
We learned that this episode. Joe doesn't think Usain Bolt's an athlete. We'll make sure that he sees that. Make sure it goes trending, guys.
Yep. Get people talking about this show.
One way or another.
I give out hot takes. All right. I think that basically covers everything Disney Plus this week. Just anything to add? Anything you want to say?
No, it was a good week this week. A lot of good stuff coming up in October, so it'll be fun to watch all that. We are going to be covering some of the best Disney Halloween related things. I don't know what we have planned for next week specifically, but no, we're going to be covering like Halloween Town. I'm going to be covering some of the Halloween specials throughout the Disney shows. I've always remembered the Sweet Love Zack and Cody special was a good one.
Yep.
That's How Raven had a really funny one. So I'm going to be kind of trying to dive in and throughout the month of October give you guys some of my favorite of these old episodes.
Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire.
That's another classic.
Yeah, that's one we need to... One of the things I do is I like is going back to watch these old DComs and realizing that, like, because there's usually always one person in every DCom who went on to be like an A-list star. Like Kaylee Cuoco is in Alley Cat Strike. Brie Larson is in Right on Track, I think that's the name of it.
You know what, Joe? You're the DCom expert. Pick the first horror DCom we're gonna cover for next week. Give us a good one.
Well, we
Horror,
can't cover
Halloween,
Under Wraps.
adjacent.
If we weren't gonna do the Under Wraps, because I want to do a drunk watch along or drink along with you for the Under Wraps and the remake double feature, so we can't do that one. Right now, I'm thinking Mom's Got a Date. Oh, Phantom of the Megaplex. Are you an old school Hollywood? Are you an old school Hollywood fan? Like
I am.
Mickey Rooney is in this movie
Oh, we gotta watch that.
as Movie Mason.
Can I sing the Phantom of the Opera soundtrack throughout the episode?
You can if you want to. I'm not gonna.
Okay, perfect episode.
So we should cover the Phantom of the Megaplex, starring Mickey Rooney as Movie
Perfect.
Mason. All right, I think that wraps up our show for this week, and had fun. Can't wait to do this next week. And without further ado, goodbye.
Hey, thank you for watching the Movie Change Up podcast. We'd really appreciate if you liked, commented, subscribed, and shared us with anyone you think might be into what we're doing over here. Thank you. Have a nice day.